Users of Reddit, what was the scariest city you've ever been or traveled to? The doorman in my hotel in Johannesburg stopped me as I was walking out and told me, "You won't last 5 minutes out there. Go back to your room where it's safe." My mate got picked up by the police in Johannesburg after going out for a walk to see the area at dusk, given a ride back to the hotel and told not to do that again. It's too dangerous for tourists. Tijuana. I saw a dead body on my way to the bus terminal, just laying on the sidewalk. There were people standing around him, smoking, drinking, and just having a good old time while dude is just dead, like dead as fuck, stiff, purple, and blue. Wildest shit I've ever seen. No one gave a single shit. Did you call police? Must have been disturbing to see. It was. I had just crossed the border and hadn't gotten a new SIM card yet, so my phone didn't do anything. I couldn't call the police, nothing. I just had to walk away as fast as possible. Probably better that you didn't, honestly. Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. At the height of the Iraq War, it was still listed as more dangerous. The gangs ran the city, driving around in technicals with mounted machine guns. Hotels had 6-foot-thick concrete-walled fences with razor wire and armed guards. For an added cost, they offered grape cages, a cage that would drop down over your bed when a sensor was triggered to protect you from being graped if people broke in. Do you have a source for the grape cages? I've searched a bit and can't find anything at all like that. To be fair, I've not searched Papua New Guinea grape cages. I frankly am too scared to. It's an old source, but yes, grape cages are definitely a thing in Port Moresby. Ruzhou, China. Not scary so much like the others. China is insanely safe, but extremely creepy. I felt like I was on a movie set. First off, it's a city of 500,000, but it's built for a population of 10 million. But it's not like those ghost cities out west where there never was anyone. It seemed like it was actually a big city, but everyone just left suddenly. The beaches were well maintained and empty. The buses ran frequently and were empty. The streets were lined with all the usual Chinese stuff and were empty. We went into a breakfast restaurant, and the food was great, but we were the only custom and the staff seemed surprised to see us. We asked for directions to the famous fish market. No one there could tell us where it was. It turned out to be about 750 meters away. It was massive and filled with vendors selling huge quantities of incredibly fresh fish. It was mostly empty. Also, almost everything was open until the wee hours of the morning, if not 24 hours. This is unusual even in the biggest Chinese cities, let alone this abandoned town. It was just an unsettling experience all around. Been there, felt that. Even crazier was that there were pockets of normalcy scattered across. Tiny restaurants that were live and bustling. But the moment you walked 20 paces in any direction, you were back in the ghost town. Really cool though, the people were super nice. Port-au-Prince. Saw a newly shot woman on the sidewalk, and the next day, a human finger in a trash heap. Same. Saw countless bodies on my way to work, across several months, blood on the wall, people being murdered right in front of me. Oh, and once they invaded the nearby church during a night prayer, forced someone to beg for their life over the mic before killing him so that the whole neighborhood would hear. Those churches are very noisy, and be shit scared. Since it still haunts me to this day, that worked well, I would say. Juarez, Mexico. I'm an Irish/Mexican, redhead. Went with cousins to see my aunt and uncle. At the time, 2007, it was the most murderous city on earth. My family members were in a cartel. There was a cartel war going on, had armed men all around at all times. For all the money, and cars, and opulence at their home, it was like being in prison. The tension in the air was thick. I was treated like a king, but that whole week, I was terrified inside. Different world. Was told, no matter what happens, do not call police, they work for the other guys. I was told that if shit kicked off, and anyone made it through the gates, to grab a gun and shoot myself. That would be the best possible outcome. I haven't been back. Why the fuck would they allow you to visit during a cartel war they're actively involved in? Lol. Feel like they could have given a heads up. Well, he wanted me to collect money in the US to send money south. So, he brought me down to show me what it was all about. I agreed to do it, but changed my mind when I got home. They aren't as brazen and open about the violence in the US, but they can reach you anywhere. I was witness to what happens to those who fuck up. Family or not, you're dead. You're just less likely to be skinned alive, or fed to a tiger, or boiled in acid in the States. But, if they want you, they'll get you. Anywhere in the world. Let's say I went to prison for money laundering, my surname alone would have certain prison gangs hunting me. It was very bluntly explained to me. I was too scared to say no to his face, but he was cool about it when I changed my mind. He also said, my father would kill us both if he found out, so I got lucky. Was in St. Louis with my cousin and we crossed that bridge. East St. Louis has gotta be the most dangerous feeling place I've ever been. Streetlights busted out at night, everything run down/abandoned, bullet holes in the stop signs, etc. We pulled up GPS and got the fuck out of there real quick lol. I drove around there when I played Pokemon Go around the country one summer. The neighborhoods terrified me even though the city I was from wasn't exactly safe either. Streets with every other home boarded up though and people looking like they'd kill you in front of the others. My Pokemon stayed in those gyms for months though. Kingston, Jamaica. I switched hotels to one more secure. Early on my last morning, I was going to the airport and my original hotel was on fire. I have a permanent scar on my forehead from Kingston. A little reminder of my last visit to Jamaica. People scampering to get on a bus, climbing on each other's backs. An old-fashioned Coke bottle was thrown at the bus and exploded into the crowd. One shard hit me right above the eye. There are no ambulances or police to come rescue you. Had to walk for a few miles in the heat to the nearest doctor covered in blood. Got stitches. Boarded the plane with a bloody patch on my head. Fought the urge to kneel down and kiss the carpet at the Philadelphia airport. I ended up driving through this tiny town in the middle of Nevada that I assume used to be a mining town. It looked like a steady paycheck hadn't been seen in this town for 20 years, the houses were all dilapidated, and the locals looked just as worn out. Bullet holes and burn marks could be seen on pretty much every building. The only reason I drove through the town instead of just sticking to the main road was to top up on gas, but I couldn't find anything, not even a small convenience store. It must have been hell for those folks considering the closest town with an actual store and gas was around 70 miles away. Edit, I took a look via Google Earth at some of the townspeople mentioned and I found it. Gaps, Nevada. Definitely not a place I'd want to go back to. This is amazing, I looked it up. It's 2 square miles. Most of the homes are trailers and many have garbage and broken down vehicles littering the properties. In 2022, the population of Gabbs, Nevada was 65 people. This was a 41.4% decrease from 2021, when the population was 111. As of 2024, the population is 31. Average income is $1,000 per month. The median age is 60 and the population is 100% white. The town was a company town for basic magnesium, started in World War II. In the 80s, the company laid off half of its workers. Gaba is situated between two other closest ghost towns, Middlegate and Luning, each 32 miles in opposite directions, and each with even smaller populations than Gabs. Cairo in Egypt. As a white non-Muslim female, the amount of harassment I experienced was unprecedented. It's interesting because I didn't necessarily worry about someone attacking me or stealing from me, but I worried about other things happening. The entire country is impoverished and corrupt. At one point, I saw a police officer hold a child, like 7 years old maybe, at gunpoint because the child was acting out and he thought it was funny. At another point, a person got hit by a car and a couple bystanders were doing everything they could while most kept on walking as if nothing was even happening. I was at a restaurant near there and it took over 30 minutes for an ambulance to get there. I'm unsure if he made it. I can't even tell you how many homeless children I saw begging for food/money with no parents anywhere to be found. I've been to other countries where this is a common scam tactic, but this was totally different. The reality is that when a country is that corrupt, public safety goes out the window. That is actually what scared me most about it. Sounds like my experience in Rabat, Morocco as a teenager, white female, in 2011. I studied Arabic there for 6 weeks. The harassment was absolutely insane. It changed something about how I saw the world and myself. The sense of being watched and objectified, all the time, and so loudly was awful. My friends and I were followed at different points, grabbed, yelled at by almost every man we passed on the streets. One of my friends was assaulted. We asked our program instructor where we could buy pepper spray and he told us that it's just not sold there. We joked that it was a public health risk. If they sold pepper spray, the entire male population would be blind. Anyways, I hear Morocco is a lot better in recent years. Maybe I'll go back sometime. Probably not. Baghdad or Baltimore at night. Shot at in both places. At least in Baghdad I was also armed. I did DOD work. Nice safe video productions at home. A contractor offered for me $300,000 to take a camera guy into Baghdad in 2005 for 2 weeks. I told him I would think about it. I was thinking to myself, wow, that would pay off our mortgage and set us up for life. So at the dinner table that night, I tell my wife about it. She puts down her fork and points to our 10, 8, and 5-year-olds and says, no. And my wife almost never says no. That was that. I've told this story on here before. I knew some geologists who worked at the Volcano Observatory on Rabaul. A new guy was getting his first ride around the area to familiarize him with the place. Halfway down the mountain, their driver just stopped the car in the road for no reason and waited. The experienced guy grabbed the newbie, dragged him out of the car, yelled run, and took off down the hillside as fast as he could go. They got clear before a bunch of guys with machetes arrived. The road went back to the town, so they stayed within sight of it and walked back to their compound. My dad was good friends with another geologist who was taken hostage in the late 1970s by some anti-Indonesian fighters on the PNG/Irian Jaya, as it was then, border. Their party had a few Indonesian soldiers with them for security who were executed. After a few weeks, he'd taken to a town and left near the local police station. Isla Trinitaria in southern Guayaquil, Ecuador. Absolutely bonkers. Can confirm, was there about 10 years ago. Armed police at every corner. Went out to purchase supplies late at night and ended up back at my hotel 6 hours later, having been taken around the city by a sketchy but lovely group of dudes. Oh, and once got invited to an after party above a club at 6 a.m. right before leaving. A guy went and checked first. Turns out we were invited because people were waiting outside to kidnap us. Fun times. I tried to book an Uber outside my hotel in Rosebank and got manhandled straight back inside. I was catching an Uber with a friend from our nice restaurant in Rosebank back to our hotel. We were meeting our Uber literally on the corner about 75 feet from the restaurant door. When we walked outside, a doorman for the building grabbed us and huddled us up against a wall and stood in front of us and told us not to move and he would stand with us and watch us until the Uber arrived like 30 seconds later. And on our way to the restaurant, when it was still daylight out, a gang descended upon the car in front of us and robbed them. Broad daylight, middle of the street, in a car. Wasn't safe for any period of time at all. This was April 2023. St. Louis. It was weird for a few reasons, but the scariest was when I was leaving the hotel myself, my mom, and my 2 large dogs were staying at. We saw a man messing with my car, like hood was propped. As I started raising my voice and approaching with my large barking dogs, he ran. I made sure to push the hood down so it would latch, or so I thought. We loaded the car up and drove away as fast as possible. As soon as we got on the freeway, the hood blew up and almost hit the windshield. I honestly have no idea how it didn't, maybe a safety feature. So I had to pull over and resecure it. Mofo obviously messed something up on purpose because he pulled up behind us. I got back in the car, my digs and mom losing their shit, drove slowish, put my hazards on and my mom called 911. He sped off after taking pics. Weirdest experience of my life. The hotel was so sketchy and my intuition was telling me to leave the entire time. I honestly think the man was in on something with the hotel staff or was hotel staff himself. My 2 dogs were extremely on edge and they're generally easygoing. Plate numbers were stolen and police wouldn't doing anything. Met a scientist recently who went to Iraq to study beetles. Said he would go back there in a heartbeat over rural Calabria in Italy. His stories were wild. Brutal mafia group there. That's what he said. He'll take gotten shot at in Iraq over kidnapped again in Calabria. I'm laughing at all the American cities listed here. Canadian cities get straight up guffaws. It was Guatemala City for me, but that's just because the driving was terrifying. The buses were awesome though. My travel companion, who has worked all over the world as an Army Ranger and DoD employee, would not allow us to leave the hotel after dark. That said, visiting Tikal was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Highly recommended. Wonderful people and incredibly affordable. I have a friend from Honduras and the stories he has shared are nightmare fuel. He would sit in the hospital while his dad was dying of cancer and regularly see MS-13 members coming in missing arms from machete attacks. Haiti. I went there for earthquake relief in 2010 and we were escorted everywhere by armed guards and weren't allowed to walk anywhere. We could only travel by car. We were there 10 weeks after the earthquake and at night they would put the bodies in a huge pile and burn them. We all came home with horrible upper respiratory infections because of it. They were also everywhere in the streets. Some of the medical stuff we dealt with, I can't even mention here. And the saddest thing is that it's gotten 10 times worse in the years since then. I get emotional just thinking about it. Why can't you mention the medical stuff you dealt with here? What restricts you? Because it could be very triggering for some people. And because it's so awful, I don't even want to mention it. All I'll say is that it involves children, even as young as toddlers. Please draw your own conclusions. I knew a woman who went to Haiti for volunteer disaster relief. If I remember correctly, it was the 2010 earthquake and hurricane. When she arrived, she said it was complete chaos and somehow ended up at a local hospital. Once there, people started bringing her injured persons, asking her what to do. She was not a medical provider of any kind, but there was no hospital staff or anyone with medical experience available either. She was, however, an environmental lab technician, so was aware of basic medical protocols and was certified in first aid. She said she ended up suturing quite a few cuts. I'm certified in first aid too, but in the US we only do first aid as a way to stop further damage with the expectation that professional medical help will be available soon. I'm not sure what I'd do if I had to help an injured person in a major disaster like that with a slim likelihood that a medical provider would be available anytime soon. Garberville in Humboldt County, California in the 90s. This was way before pot was legal, and as an outsider you were absolutely looked at like you were a fed. Scariest damn town I've ever stopped in. They made a documentary about the area, if I recall correctly. It's called Murder Mountain. Kabul. Can you explain why, like what year and like what was it like? I'm not OP, but I was there as a kid from 2004 to 2011 as a US civilian. Most of my life was lived inside the perimeter of my house. We had a huge wall with barbed wire around our house, armed guards, drivers who were familiar with the roads, the locals, and they knew where the landmines were placed so they can avoid that part of the road. The only reliable and durable vehicles you could buy were Toyota Land Cruisers or Nissan Patrol 4x4s. If you bought the diesel versions, the drivers would blowtorch the engines in the winter to unfreeze them before starting them up. Wild times lol. What did your parents do? My dad has some business over there, mostly private, travel and tourism company, but some work with the US, ran a local media company affiliated with the USA. I went to college in Utica, a city in central New York, primarily run by the mafia. It was ranked as one of the 10 safest cities in the US at the time. You could walk anywhere as long as you didn't interfere. In the 4 years I was there were 3 murders. A guy who turned state's evidence was shot in a crowded bar, but no one saw or heard anything. Another locked themselves in the trunk of their burning car. It was ruled A. And someone jumped into the river in midwinter. Another. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Almost got robbed literally 100 feet outside the airport walking to a cab. Luckily I saw police and my instincts made me shout hard, which made the police aware and the thieves fled the scene. Almost lost my brand new Nikon back in the time. A friend lived there for a couple of years. He got kidnapped. The police. They were local cops and the military police had to get him out. The only reason he even got help was that his journalist girlfriend blew up the story and used her contacts in government to force action. What do you mean local police officers? There are both civil and military police. He was kidnapped by civil, local, police and retrieved by military police. I have traveled lots of places in this world. The most scared I've ever been was lost in downtown Baltimore at night on a weekend. I had made a series of mistakes trying to go around the city, and had accidentally taken a spur that put me right into the downtown. I have no clue what area of town I drove through, but the only human beings that I saw out and about at 3 a.m. in the morning looked like zombies. It's really hard to describe, but the way that they moved, the way that they looked at me as I drove by, it was very scary. Out of desperation, this was way before cell phones did anything more than phone calls and basic texts. I was still using a paper atlas. I stopped at a 7-Eleven. I was waiting in line to ask directions, and a guy went out of his way to ask me what I was doing there. That's how much I stood out. I told him that I was trying to get directions to get back onto the highway, and he told me that he was an undercover cop. Things were about to go down right there, and I needed to leave. I told him that's what I was trying to do. He thought about it for a second, told me to get in my car, follow him and try to keep up. He would get me to an on-ramp and then go back to the store. He drove like a bat out of hell, and did get me to the freeway and then busted a U-turn and flew away. I have no clue how bad my night would have continued to be if he hadn't been there and guided me out of there. Had a convention there a few years ago. I was told to not stray more than a block from the hotel that was in the nicest area downtown. Later in the day, while riding in a taxi, I asked the driver if this was good advice and he agreed. He immediately turned and pointed to the street corner while we were stopped at a red light, and said a man was shot in the back of the head in the middle of the day in front of the nicest mall in town. I once accidentally crossed the wrong border from Thailand, traveling to Laos. I ended up in a place called the Special Economic Zone of the Golden Triangle. No data, couldn't speak the language, nothing. I ended up in some weird hotel that looked like a jail cell. I managed to book a 36-hour bus journey out of there for the next day. That evening, I went for a walk around. I was offered child escorts, and that's when I realized how extremely dangerous this place was. I went back to my room and went to sleep. The next morning, police raided my room with guns pointed to my head. I later learned, the only real reason any Westerner would ever travel there is because they haul mass amounts of opium out of there, so I was a suspected drug dealer. Also, I accidentally pissed some guy off who I assume was a gangster. So I don't know if that had some part to play. Terrifying. Now, I sometimes get questioned at airports because of my travel history. This didn't happen to me but my uncle and auntie. For some context for what follows, my uncle was about 6'7" and built like a rugby player, and my auntie looked like your stereotypical blonde 20-year-old trophy wife. It was in the 90s and they went to Cairo for a holiday. They didn't have to worry too much about people harassing them or scamming them due to my uncle being huge, until a vendor asked my uncle how much for my auntie. My uncle, who was not thinking, said, 20 camels, to which the vendor yelled deal, grabbed my uncle's hand, shook it and tried to drag my auntie away. Well, my uncle was having none of that and punched him. They ended up having to flee Cairo as there was an angry mob trying to A, beat up / kill my uncle and B, take possession of my auntie. Till the day he died, my auntie did not let him live down the time that he sold her for 20 camels, and she nearly became some random guy's property. My wife really wants to go to Egypt to see the pyramids as she has been fascinated by them for years now, but I refuse to take her. Yeah, I can confirm. My wife and I were there on honeymoon and she legit got harassed by everyone and everyone trying to trade camels for her. Reminder to not joke around about that shit over there. Local police asked if we also wanted to climb the Great Pyramid, so we did, and then held at gunpoint or face prison if they didn't get paid. Awesome view though. Fort Moresby, Papua New Guinea. I went there as a 15 white boy with blonde hair and blue eyes for their national swimming comp, and we were hosted by families. The lady hosting us said to me right after we got there, if you want to go for a walk, don't take any money or wear a watch because you will get robbed. The word will was so crazy to me, not if, or could, it was will. Others that stand out. They had a 14-year-old security guard who was a member of the most feared gang in PNG, so younger than me. They informed us that this is because if anyone touched their home they would enforce it. They had a beautiful home, but it was surrounded by barbed wire and 2 huge German shepherds and 2 maids. They had satellite with every movie in the theaters and hundreds of channels. They informed me that copywriting was not enforceable in PNG. True not, I didn't care, it was awesome. One of the best swimmers at the comp was attacked and stabbed with a piece of corrugated iron and his friend abducted on the first night of the meet. Anytime there was a red light at a stoplight, they just blew through it because they would get carjacked. People would stare at you and smile and have these crazy eyes and bright red stains on their teeth from eating betel nut. It was so hot and humid during the day, they didn't let us compete from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There is a lot more. With this, the place, the people, the culture, is insanely beautiful. What happened to the guy who was stabbed, and the boy who was kidnapped? And did you place in any of the races? He was at the meet the next day. The person he was with was a girl, and they were on a date. He got to her home, unlocked the car, and talked for a little bit. He said it was instant. A group of men opened the door and grabbed them both. They stabbed him, and he took off running and turned around to see some men grabbing her. He got away and called the police. What amazed me was how calm he was about it. He blamed himself and said he didn't make her get out of the car fast enough and that he should never have unlocked the car. But this was said like he misplaced his keys or something. They had not found her by the time we left. I medaled in 2 races. Because we were not PNG nationals, we got the medal but were not accredited with the result. I was good but not a great swimmer, and this was over 20 years ago.